What's up everybody, back with another raid guide, and today we're taking a look at Mythic Skolex in the new raid Sepulcher of the first ones. So let's hop into it. I'll be going over most of the new mechanics, how to deal with them, as well as some tips and tricks for your progression. I won't be covering all of the heroic mechanics unless they've been updated for Mythic, so if you're not up to date on how the fight works, feel free to check out my heroic guide. Setup wise, we ran 2 tanks, 3 healers, and 15 DPS, as the DPS check can be pretty rough early on. Keep in mind though, this is a very healing intense fight as well. Tanks gets absolutely shredded, raid gets shredded, so if you get to Skolex later in the tier or have a bit more gear, I'd recommend 4 healing, but if DPS is needed, downsize a healer and give it a try. So what's new for the old tapeworm on Mythic? Well, apart from them hitting the overdrive on the tank damage tuning, the new thing here is the volatile residue pools. So anytime the boss casts Retch, a few pools will spawn where you retched, and if a melee or, well, anyone gets hit by the devouring blood pools that spawns around melee, you get volatile residue pools. Now on top of this, you cannot dispel the devouring blood on Mythic, so it is a massive DPS loss, an extra strain on healers if you do get hit, plus you get the pools. But the big kicker here is that when the boss burrows and leave that huge collapsing emptiness at its burrow location, that entire area will be filled with volatile residue. And if you stand in it, you take around 12k shadow damage every 1.5 seconds, so you can run through one, but not more than that. So what this means is that you'll slowly get less and less space to dodge mechanics, and you have to bait the burrows a bit differently than on Heroic, for example. Overall, there's not a ton of new mechanics to deal with, but the tuning of the fight makes it extremely punishing early on, where gear isn't as plentiful. Cue the picture. Now take these marks with a grain of salt, as they can differ a bit from pull to pull depending on where puddles spawn, but the idea is to bait the burrow like 30 to 40 yards away from Skolex and kinda go in a circle or half circle around. Now you don't want Skolex to end up right at the edge of the volatile residue from the burrow, as that'll effectively lock off a huge amount of space around the boss. So always bait far enough away so you have space between the big pool of residue and the tapeworm. We also used gateway on every other burrow bait, which allowed us to bait a bit further back on those, giving us a little bit more space. Now if you have a slow tank, make sure to grip him into the baits, and if you have a brewmaster like me and he does this and wipes the raid at 4%, smack him or her on the head and say, "Bad tank, don't do that." You also want to make sure the raid gets knocked away towards their next bait location and tanks the opposite way. Now lastly, on the topic of the burrow part itself deals a ton of damage when he noms you, so if possible use damage reduction cooldowns for this. Now on pull, we take 2 retches and then we bait burrow during the 3rd retch, but after that we bait on every other retch. So following first burrow, as you're dodging the first retch, you want to end up roughly in the position you want to bait the next burrow in, and this just keeps repeating for the rest of the fight. We marked one of our healers and he kinda decided where we went for each burrow, but what you see here in the picture is roughly what we did every pull. And if possible, use wind rushes or roars on retches. It's not mandatory by any means, but it does increase your damage as you get done with the retch part faster. Now for the dust blast soaker, it's pretty similar to Heroic. We had 2 groups of 3 for the soaks that rotates after every single retch. Now keep in mind that on pull, if you take 3 retches before burrowing, the first soak team will soak twice before resetting their stacks, so it'll take a lot more damage. So if possible, put your tanky ranged classes in that group like warlocks and boomkins, and do not put healers in this groups, as they will not be able to reach the tanks while doing this. So quick breakdown of that. On pull, group 1 with tanky range soaks Dust Blast. After first retch, second group moves out to soak. After second retch, it's group 1. Then after burrow, it's group 1 again. And after that, you just rotate soakers on every retch. Now the reason we do 3 retches at the start is simply because the boss doesn't have any stacks. We have Bloodlust running, so it helps delaying it a bit. Kinda like Guardian and Sanctum. Now for the Devouring Blood in melee, we simply marked one of our melee and they tried to be stacked as much as possible and dodge/move as a group whenever blood spawned, which made it a lot easier to manage. Now for you tanks out there, have fun. No joke, this boss slaps and he slaps hard. The bleed from Rend on Mythic is just cruel, and the Rift Mob will one-shot most tanks in early gear without some kind of defensive trinket or external. Now for the bleed, you can actually bop it, remove it with Dwarf Racial and Kyrian Pot, so play around with that a bit as needed. Other than that, be mindful of melee and reposition if they get too close while they're dodging stuff. Melee shouldn't be near tanks, but yeah, it's gonna happen. And that's pretty much it for Skolex on Mythic. Not a ton of mechanics, but like I said, extremely punishing if you mess something up. And on top of this, every time you reset the stacks with Burrow, the boss deals more damage, and it just keeps ramping up. But yeah, if you have any questions at all about this encounter, hit me up in the comments or become a patron or Twitch sub and get access to the Stankie Discord, where you can find raid weakauras, healing notes, and a lot of awesome people that can help you during raid progression. Now don't forget the usual stuff like comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It really helps me out. I'm also streaming all of our progression on Twitch, so make sure to check that out. It's on Thursdays and Sundays now, and I raid with a Swedish guild, so comms will be a bit Swinglish. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.